This will be a people versus the establishment by-election.
This is a desperate stunt from Nigel Farage.
We're not standing a candidate in the fake by-election, which Nigel Farage is causing.
The hypocrisy of these people triggering an unnecessary by-election. The name's Burnham, Andy Burnham, Makerfield. Does that ring a bell?
For more than a decade now, Nigel Farage has had the ability to make headlines, to keep us all guessing about his future. To name a few, there was the time he quit as UKIP leader because he'd failed to win a by-election.
I'm a man of my word. I don't break my word. So I should be writing to the UK UKIP National Executive in a few minutes, saying that I am standing down as leader of UKIP.
There was a time he quit UKIP again after the European referendum because he said he'd fulfilled his political ambitions.
It has come at a cost to me and perhaps to those around me. During the referendum campaign, I said, I want my country back. And what I'm saying today is I want my life back. And it begins right now.
And there was a time, of course, you'll remember, he came back to lead Reform UK to stand in the 2024 general election.
I tell you what, I've done it before, I'll do it again, I'll surprise everybody.
And so here we are today, just over 2 years after Nigel Farage won the seat of Clacton. He's announced he is resigning to stand in the seat again. In the past, the question was whether his time in frontline politics was coming to an end. This time, Mr Farage says he's resigning because he's fighting on. But will it be a worthwhile fight if he's the only one in the ring and if he's ultimately fighting himself? Well, we've had a pretty unusual speech to camera from Mr Farage this afternoon, live from his TV studio at Reform headquarters here in Westminster. Here's our chief political correspondent, John Craig, with what he had to say and all the reaction to it.
This will be a people versus the establishment by-election.
That was the claim by Nigel Farage as he made his shock announcement that he plans to resign as an MP and fight a by-election in his Clacton constituency. In a 20-minute speech which he billed as a statement about his future in public life, the Reform UK leader accused the establishment of using foul means against him and insisted he'd done nothing wrong and not misused public money.
Let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero.
His defiant fight back comes as Mr Farage is under a parliamentary investigation into an undeclared £5 million donation from Christopher Harborne, a Thailand-based crypto billionaire. He's also now facing a further inquiry into his links with a long-time friend and ally, convicted fraudster George Cottrell, known in Westminster as Posh George. On the by-election, Mr Farage said,
It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that Reform has started.
But within hours, Labour, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems and Restore Britain said they won't be standing in the by-election, dismissing it as a circus, a fake by-election and a vanity project. Also in his speech, Mr Farage accused the media of claiming he was a crook and dishonest and breaching his privacy.
There is no public interest in my daughter whatsoever. She is not involved in current affairs, doesn't seek to be involved in current affairs, and has never been used by me once at any point in my political career. She now has broadcasters haranguing her. Sky News were one of them, and when I questioned them on it, they willfully and deliberately lied and said on their channel that they hadn't contacted the family.
His speech followed an angry exchange with Sky News as Mr Farage arrived back in the UK from the United States.
Mr Farage, Sky News. Was it a mistake not to declare the gifts from George Cottrell, sir?
You tell your bosses you harass my family anymore, and I'll take you with serious consequences. That's what your organisation has done this morning. Go away.
Was it a mistake not to declare the gifts, sir?
Did you not hear me? You have broken all the rules, Leveson and everything else. Cut.
Sky News said in a statement, Nigel Farage has legitimate questions to answer about the gift he accepted from Mr Cottrell. Given the clear public interest in this matter, Sky News has been seeking a response from Mr Farage and has made reasonable efforts to contact him. We acknowledge that Sky News was part of a broadcast pool operation outside a property linked to Mr Farage yesterday. We approached the property off-camera on a single occasion, identified ourselves, and the occupant chose not to engage. Reform UK allies defended Mr Farage.
Nigel is sick of the way that the old political establishment and their media friends are treating him, because ultimately they are treating the British public with contempt, because they don't want the change that Nigel represents to happen.
But Mr Farage's political opponents dismissed his by-election move.
This is a desperate stunt from Nigel Farage, and it's obvious why he's doing it. He is up to his neck in sleaze. Politics should be about improving the lives of millions of people, not about personal gain, not about hiding dodgy donations. And I think the public will see this for exactly what it is.
Nigel Farage is having a hissy fit because the first time he's actually having to deal with some real scrutiny. What he needs to do is be honest about where his fishy £5 million came from, rather than calling a fake by-election to run away from a standards investigation. We will be standing a candidate in the real by-election because no one is above Parliament.
The by-election in Clacton means the investigation into Mr Farage by Parliament's Standards Commissioner will now be suspended. But that doesn't mean it's over. The rules on MPs' conduct say that if an MP is re-elected, the investigation can be resumed, which means Mr Farage could face a second by-election if he's suspended and there's a recall petition.
But for now, for Mr Farage, it's back to campaigning in Clacton, where he'll defend a majority of nearly 8,500. Though with rival parties boycotting the by-election, it won't be much of a contest. John Craig, Sky News.
Well, our political editor Beth Rigby joins us live now from Ankara, where NATO leaders have been meeting today. Thanks, Beth, for being with us. So do you think that this gamble is going to pay off?
Well, look, Ali, where are we tonight? This is a party leader that is, in a way, jumping before he could be pushed. And the reason I say that is that there is a growingly settled view in Westminster that it was likely that Nigel Farage would be sanctioned by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner over these donations. That is still an ongoing investigation. But he is facing now two probes, one over a £5 million donation from Christopher Harborne, the crypto billionaire that lives in Thailand and is a donor of both Reform and other political parties that Nigel Farage has fronted in the past. He took that donation in the spring before he became an MP, but the rules state that if there's any question about the motive of that donation or any doubt about whether it is purely personal, you should register it. He chose not to insist, and it was a personal gift. And now George Cottrell, a long-term ally, a convicted criminal, it now emerges that he took benefits from Mr Cottrell before the general election. And Nigel Farage himself said today that he's under investigation for that. And looking down the lens of that, Nigel Farage has decided to take back as much control of this situation as he can, resign and trigger a by-election before potentially he faces one should he be sanctioned by Parliament and faces a recall petition in the constituency of Clacton. And he's trying to do it on his terms, so he's framing it as the people versus the establishment, and he's making it a verdict on that, or trying to frame it like that. But the issues he's got tonight are twofold. Number one, the other political parties are not, it appears, standing anyone in this by-election. The Labour Party tonight, the National Executive Committee have met, and the Labour Party has said tonight Nigel Farage is engulfed in a sleaze scandal. He's desperately trying to change the subject. It's pathetic, and the Labour Party is not going to indulge it. Labour's ruling body, the National Executive Committee, has decided not to stand a candidate in what they are calling a circus. The same for the Lib Dems, the same for the Conservatives. In fact, the only person that's saying that they will stand in this by-election at the moment is Count Binface, and we know him very well because he stands in all by-elections. So it might be that Nigel Farage ends up contesting the seat, being re-elected, and then crucially, as John was saying in his report there, he could still face another by-election, because if the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner does say he breached MP's rules, he could still face a by-election. And the political parties tonight are saying if there was a second by-election, they would stand candidates against him. So this is going to run on. I would say, having observed Nigel Farage in recent weeks, having covered Nigel Farage and the rise of reform for months, this is a leader on the ropes. He's rattled, he's defensive about these donations. He's trying to take control of the situation to win a popular mandate, if you like, for the people, from the people of Clacton, and turn it into a political row. But the facts are he is under investigation for breaking parliamentary rules, and those investigations are not going to go away. So it could be that this is a problem delayed, not resolved.
OK, Beth, thanks so much, live for us there at NATO. Not necessarily the story you expected to be covering this morning. Thank you. Right, let's bring our panel in. Founder of Conservative Home, now Reform UK member Tim Montgomery, Labour peer Baroness Aisha Hazarika, and former Chancellor Sir Jeremy Hunt. Thanks all for being here. I mean, what a day. Jeremy, what do you make of this? Do you think, I mean, it's a big move by Nigel Farage. Do you think that by pitching this as the establishment versus the people, he's going to win out?
Well, I think Nigel Farage is one of the most formidable politicians in Britain today, but he has made a miscalculation. And I think there are two reasons. Firstly, I mean, it was obviously an attempt to distract attention from a sleaze inquiry in Parliament that he thought was going to go the wrong way. But because none of the other parties are going to stand against him, it's going to look like a totally sham exercise, and it won't have the effect that he was intending. But I think, secondly, looking at him today, for someone who has in the past been so formidable, as Beth said, he just looked really rattled, really angry. And I think it's just, for me, it's been around a while. I've been an MP for 20 years. I mean, you know, I remember the expenses scandal where Labour MPs, Conservative MPs, they were tumbling like there's no tomorrow. I myself had a very difficult period in the Leveson inquiry. I can think of, you know, Boris Johnson in Partygate, Keir Starmer and his freebies. I mean, the idea this is something that's just happening to Nigel Farage is for the birds. This is the scrutiny you get in public life. And this is the man who wants to be our Prime Minister. And it just feels it's all a bit much for him.
Aisha, I can see you nodding along there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jeremy has said. And actually, the clip that you played of Keir Starmer, I have a lot of sympathy for what he said. Look, we have rules about transparency in politics for a reason. And those of us who kind of intersect between politics and journalism, like Tim and I do, there's a phrase, right, which is follow the money. It's a kind of standard phrase whenever you're discussing, looking at a story and, you look at the great investigations that have stood the time of history. It's always follow the money. And that's why transparency is important. And generally, there is a bit of a rule, and you don't have to be a brain box to work this out. You just have a bit of gumption about you. He who pays the piper picks the tune, right? That is just a truth. Nobody gives money for free. That is just a reality, and that is why transparency in politics is so important. We all have a register. I have one as a member of the House of Lords. Jeremy will have one as a member of Parliament. That's why this is so important. And then it's for the public. The public can then decide if they are comfortable about the links between individuals and donations. They might be perfectly comfortable with this. The point is, there are rules there for a reason. Put it all on the register. Just be transparent about it. And if you are confident and you are sure that you're on the path of righteousness and you are sure that the public's behind you, they'll back you. You don't need to cover it up.
Tim, have these two got a point here? And do you think Nigel Farage is rattled by all this? You know him.
I agree, actually, with quite a lot of what's been said, but I want to take issue particularly with something that Jeremy said. The level of phishing that's taking place by the media at the moment is extraordinary. I know most of the Reform MPs, almost every week, they're facing sort of allegations. Journalists are being paid to look at every aspect of their lives, their history. Most of it comes to nothing because there's not much there. But the effort to try and destroy Reform by an established political elite that largely agree with each other, by newspapers, is off the scale. I've not seen it. I was in the Conservative Party for 30 years. I've seen nothing like it. Look, Nigel does have questions to answer, and he hasn't answered some of those questions well yet. I thought the performances he gave a couple of weeks ago were really poor. As one of the best media performers in the country, he's not good at answering these questions, and he needs to get better. But is the parliamentary process really going to resolve this? I've been involved in 3 parliamentary processes, and they are quite political. They don't really accord with the court. You can't have witnesses for your defence. There isn't a defence prosecution council. And then, ultimately, MPs decide what the sanctions are. This is a parliament full of Reform's opponents.
So you think it was the right move today?
Well, I think let the people of Clacton decide. You know,
well, they might have to decide twice.
They put him there, and the allegation that's being made is if they'd kind of known what we now know about the crypto money, etc., they might not have put him there. Well, we're now going to see whether the people of Clacton still want him. And I actually don't think the by-election is over. My suspicion is that there may be a sort of, for those who are old enough, remember Martin Bell standing in Tatton against Neil Hamilton. And if you have, like, an anti-sleaze candidate, maybe they could win. Keir Starmer says he's up to his neck in sleaze. The British people will see through him. I don't agree with him. I think if they really believed that he was up to his neck in the sleeves, they could win this by-election. The fact that they're not standing candidates suggests that they know a lot of this is artifice.
They're not standing candidates right now because they want to wait until the parliamentary process has been committed, and then absolutely let's have the by-election then. And by the way, Nigel Farage may win it. You're right, but let the process take its course.
It's not a fair process. That's the point.
The idea that this is somehow unique victimhood for Nigel Farage is really rich. And by the way, I get this myself. I've had Labour colleagues moan to me, because obviously I'm a radio presenter as well and I'm a journalist. I've had Labour colleagues moan to me saying, isn't the media awful the way they've gone after Angela Rayner and the way they've gone after the freebie story and the way they've gone after Peter Mandelson? So, and then, by the way, the same Labour colleagues were delighted when The Guardian and The Mirror went after Boris Johnson with Partygate.
Jeremy,
so the idea that this is a unique feature that everyone's picking on Reform, it's just not true.
Do you think Reform are getting undue scrutiny?
Absolutely not. I mean, look, if there had been a £5 million gift to Kemi Badenoch a year before the last election, or if Keir Starmer did get free gifts, by the way, in the way that George Cottrell seemed to give quite a lot of stuff to Nigel Farage, and that was all over the media. And I think the bigger question here is that Nigel Farage wants to be Prime Minister of a democracy. And in a democracy, we have a free press who can say what they like about any politicians and do. And that's just how it is, and it's how it always has been. And I actually think that is a good thing. I actually think it is very important. One of the good things about this country is that, you know, for all our faults, we're actually one of the least corrupt in the world, because you guys have a completely free run. We have to declare stuff, we have investigations when we cross the line, and that's what's happening on this occasion. I think if Nigel Farage really wanted to allow the people of Clacton to form a view about his behaviour, he would have waited until the Standards Commissioner...
until a biased process had ended.
Yeah, I don't know it's a biased process.
I do, for the reasons that I've already stated. I could go into detail. Look, the Financial Times recently led on its front page with a story about a resignation of a Reform councillor in Kent. I could give you 101 examples. I've never seen the Tory party and the Labour Party examine for what they do at council level.
Do you think the Times should have been looking into Lord Ali?
It's understandable that there are examples. There are examples of parties being investigated. I readily concede that. I'm saying, and there may be a good reason for it. Reform is coming from a handful of MPs. It's coming without the infrastructure of a traditional party. Maybe because of that sort of infancy, that novelty, they need more examination. But to say that reform isn't being investigated more, I could give countless examples, like that local government example, which is off the scale.
That is... I'm sorry, Tim. I'm really going to push back against that. There was unbelievably forensic work done against my party, the Labour Party, looking at what was happening with local councillors and their tweets, particularly around the shameful episode of anti-Semitism. And there were many people very cross in the Labour Party. Why were journalists sniffing around local councillors? Because this was a story that mattered. Now, this was not comfortable for my party, but the journalists did the right thing, particularly journalists like Gabriel Pogrund, who's led this investigation. And they did uncover difficult, uncomfortable truths that we in the Labour Party had to confront.
The local government is barely examined by the national papers on a regular, ongoing...
What about the Green Party? With all the local councillors and the anti-Semitism. They've had to have by-elections. That's just not true.
I think if you look at the scale of the examination of the new reformed councils, no councils under Labour and the Tories are examined in the same way. They really are.
What about the Green Party? The number of candidates that have had to resign because of shameful comments they've made.
Lots of corruption. When there's corruption, of course it comes up. But a general examination of the performance of reform councils is of a different scale.
And Reform are on track. As Nigel Farage said today, they have led in, I think, the last over 300 polls, says that Nigel Farage is on course to be Prime Minister. Does that not merit some scrutiny, or do you think we should all just sit back and say, "Oh, let's not examine"?
You're being silly now. I'm not, of course, saying that reform. I have never said reform doesn't deserve scrutiny. I would never say that. I'm a journalist like you. I believe in.
Well, it sounds like you're making that. You're coming close to that argument.
I'm talking about the scale of it. Come on, that's unfair.
But then,
Let's bring Jeremy in as well.
What about when people went after Labour councillors about anti-Semitism? Are you saying that was silly?
No,
I haven't. Let's bring Jeremy in. Do you think it's fair that, Nigel Farage is a modern politician, a politician that makes lots of money, and in a sense, should we not punish success? And is there too much scrutiny of the fact that he does make a lot of money?
I set up and ran my own business before I went into politics, and I have to disclose a lot of financial details about my wealth, which, frankly, I'd rather the world didn't know about, but that is part of the deal when you go into public life. And what I think is worrying for a party that wants to take control, win the next general election, wants its leader to be Prime Minister, it's already complaining about the media. Now, my experience in politics is that when governments start saying it's not fair, the media aren't treating us well, we'd be fine if it wasn't for the media being so damned unfair. I mean, that's what Conservative governments used to say when we were on the rack. It's what Labour government's been doing in the last 2 years. It's not our fault, it's the horrible media. And Reform are now... Hang on, Tim. Reform are now doing it, and they're not even in power. And I just think, come on, guys, this is a democracy. We have a free media. Toughen up. Because if you want to be Prime Minister, it's going to be a lot tougher than this. You're not going to just have people looking at what you've declared and what you haven't declared. You're going to have to be making decisions about what Putin does one day, what happens in the Middle East, what happens in America. There's a lot of much more difficult things than this. And I just think it's extraordinary that Reform seem to be absolutely crumbling at the first little bit of scrutiny that makes them uncomfortable.
Okay. We will come back to you, I promise. But we're going to hear from someone else from Reform, because just before we came on air, I spoke to Reform UK's Deputy Leader, Richard Tice. Richard Tice, thanks so much for being with us. Has this turned into a bit of a farce? Because if the other parties stand aside, which it looks like Labour, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems are, is Farage still going to stand? Is this what the Lib Dems are calling a vanity project?
Chickens. These other parties, they've been hounding us. They've been saying that Nigel is guilty and that this may lead to a by-election. Nigel's had enough of it and has said, bring it on. He's bringing it on. And all of a sudden, they're now running for the hills. You can't see them for dust because they all of a sudden realised he's outsmarted and outsussed them once again, and they know that he'll win hands down with the bigger majority.
But if there's going to be a by-election, why do we need 2 by-elections?
Well, ask them, don't ask us. Stand in the first one, stop being so ridiculous. Bring the standards inquiry forward, otherwise what they were deliberately going to do was to hang it out for 6 to 12 months so that all you good folk in the media could say, oh, there's a standards inquiry overhanging Nigel, oh, he's a naughty boy. He's saying, we're not going to play the establishment and the media
But don't you
at
think
their
the rules
tired
are
old
there
games.
for a reason?
Yeah,
Do you think it's right that
it's not
the
right for
Standards Commissioner is looking into this in the first place?
It's not right for a Standards Commissioner to take 6 to 12 months over these sorts of inquiries. There are other inquiries where he's taken just as long, and that is unacceptable. And Nigel's saying, if you're so concerned, let's take it to the people. Let's take it to the good folk of Clacton. They're the people. And, oh, and by the way, we've offered to meet the cost of it. All of a sudden, you know, they're whinging about the cost of it, and then all of a sudden we say to pay for, oh, no, you can't do that, no.
On the cost of it, I mean, you know, do you think it is democratic to pay for a by-election that you're taking part in?
They complain if it's costing money. So we say, don't worry about that, we'll cover that. And then they complain again. I mean, these like squabbling children in a playground. It's unbelievable. And the hypocrisy of these people triggering an unnecessary by-election. The name's Burnham, Andy Burnham, Makerfield. Does that ring a bell?
Well, you criticised that, and now you're saying that this is...
You can't have it both ways, right?
Well, you're having it both ways.
We're consistent with it. You know, we said, if you want a by-election in Makerfield, have a by-election. We stood for it, and we lost, fine. But the point is here that they've basically been sussed, and they don't like it. That's the reality of what's going on here. And it's the good people of Clacton who should have the democratic decision. These people don't seem to like democracy. Andy Burnham's not calling a general election. We're saying, bring it on, let's have a by-election, let's win it, and then we can all move on.
So just to be completely clear, you know, do you think these rules exist for a reason? Do you think it's right
and we're absolutely clear.
The Parliamentary Commission on Standards is looking into Nigel Farage?
Of course.
So why don't you just let the process run its course and then have the by-election, potentially?
We're confident that Nigel hasn't broken any
Well, then you
rules.
won't even be a by-election. Why do you wait for them to decide that?
Because, frankly, the establishment are out to kill us electorally. We know that. I mean, your own good organisation has been caught lying, hounding Nigel's daughter, which is a breach of the code of Leveson, which they've basically... I think Sky have given a semi-apology. You might like to confirm that.
Well, do you want me to read our statement? Nigel Farage has legitimate questions to answer about the gift he accepted from Mr Cottrell. Given the clear public interest in this matter, Sky News has been seeking a response from Mr Farage and has made reasonable efforts to contact him. We acknowledge that Sky News was part of a broadcast pool operation outside a property linked to Mr Farage yesterday. We approached the property off camera on a single occasion, identified ourselves, and the occupant chose not to engage. So that's a statement.
That's your statement, but originally Sky said we didn't approach any property. Sky knew they were not approaching Nigel's property. They knew they were approaching his daughter's property. That is a breach of the spirit of Leveson. It's a breach of everything.
Let's be clear, we did not approach his daughter.
You approached the house with a camera, with a microphone, and if his daughter had answered it, questions would have been asked of.
OK. Well, I think, you know, this is bigger than that, isn't it? This is about whether there's going to be is there any point in a by-election if Nigel Farage is the only person standing?
This is about the hounding of Nigel, of reform. I'll go take us to the other point. The National Crime Agency have leaked my company bank statements, my private conversations with my bank manager to The Guardian, which we've exposed today. I mean, this is unbelievable. We're calling it out. We've had enough of this.
I guess
They've literally... You've now got one of the most senior crime agency literally breaking its own laws, breaking the rules, criminal activity going on within the National Crime Agency. I'm waiting for the Director General to respond.
Do you accept that there's a degree of scrutiny that comes if you want to be the Prime Minister?
So you think it's acceptable for the National Crime Agency to literally break the law in order to give my bank conversations and my bank statements? Well,
I'm just
telling you, we've had enough. We're sick and tired of this abuse, of this breaking the law, of this permanent attempt by the establishment to do whatever is necessary, regardless of the rules. You talk about Nigel applying by the rules. What about the National Crime Agency applying by the rules?
Where is Nigel Farage, by the way? You know, does he not want to be interviewed by us?
He's literally just given a press conference. I'm being
interviewed by... It wasn't a press conference. We didn't get to ask any questions.
He's literally given a statement. The point is...
There were no journalists there. That doesn't count as a press conference.
You whinge in the first place when it's a one-man band. So Nigel, you know, creates spokespeople, and then you whinge again. I mean, am I not good enough for you? Don't you like me? I mean, do I not fit the part? Am I ugly?
Is it a one-man band? You know, if Nigel Farage loses this by-election, will this party survive without him?
Look, Nigel is going nowhere. Nigel is going to win this by-election, and the establishment will be sussed, and we're calling it out. and the British people will realise what the establishment are trying to do to the leadership of reform. It's completely unacceptable.
OK. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is not the first person to criticise Nigel Farage, yesterday told Cathy Newman that George Cottrell is a problem for Nigel Farage. You know, do you accept that he is a problem for Nigel Farage? George
Cottrell is a very good friend of Nigel Farage. He made a mistake 10 years ago. We are a Christian nation that believes actually in you know, sinners can be redeemed.
We're forgiving a lot of people.
Well, we've got 2,600, 2,400 councillors. You know, that is the reality. That's how you work in a Christian country. Otherwise, you're basically saying, oh, you've made one mistake, you're written off for life. Don't be daft. OK, and to be absolutely clear, if the other parties do not stand, Nigel Farage is going to do this alone. You know, his game isn't going to work, is it, if no one's Well, the irony is, apparently now we hear that the Lib Dems are going to try and stop the by-election from happening because they don't want to be exposed as cowards by not standing account. I mean, you literally can't make up the hypocrisy and the cowardice of all the other parties. They've been outsmarted and they don't like it. And if this by-election goes ahead, there's going to potentially be another by-election because the investigation could then happen again once he's an MP again. So is he going to stand again? Is he going to stand twice in two by-elections? Nigel will stand again and, if necessary, he will fight it and win it. But everybody will realise what a ridiculous waste of time. Well, don't you think people at home are going to be thinking it's a ridiculous waste of time? I think what the Standards Commissioner should do is get on, finish his inquiries, make his judgment, and everyone can have this by-election, stand, don't be a bunch of chickens, and then let's move on. OK, thank you so much, Richard Tice. Really appreciate your time. OK, well, as you just heard, Nigel Farage and Reform have made allegations about an interaction between a Sky News journalist at a property connected to Mr Farage yesterday. This afternoon, he released footage of the incident, which you can see here. And so you're clear what you're seeing here. This is footage which was posted on Nigel Farage's X account earlier. And it appears to be filmed off a screen. You can see the time and date, which shows it was filmed yesterday morning at 7:41 a.m. It's labelled driveway on the screen as well. And there are two parts to this footage. So this is the first part that you're looking at now. You can see the time at the top, 7:41. A car appears to be there. 7:41 in the morning, and then there is an edit at some point, a dip to black, and the time changes. There you go, and you can see 10:10 a.m. The light changes as well, and this second section lasts for 30 seconds. Well, we've since now had a clarification from Sky News. You can see the second clip here, the gentleman walking towards the house with a different timestamp that you can see in the top left corner. Well, as I say, we have since had a clarification from Sky News, which I'll read to you now. Sky News was not at the property at 7:41 a.m, as has already been acknowledged. And as shown in the footage from 10:19 a.m, Sky News was outside a property where Mr Farage was registered to vote at the last election. Sky News did not interact with Mr Farage's daughter. On a single occasion, we approached the property without a camera operator, identified ourselves as Sky News, and the adult occupant chose not to engage. We were seeking to contact Mr Farage to ask questions about the gift he accepted from Mr Cottrell. This is a well-established and routine journalistic practice when reporting on matters of legitimate public interest. The footage clearly demonstrates that Sky News did not hound or pursue Mr Farage's daughter. At no stage did we seek to speak to anyone other than Mr Farage in connection with this story. Well, as you can see, Tim Montgomery, Aisha Hazarika and Jeremy Hunt are still on the sofa tonight. So we just had that interview with Richard Tice. What did you make of it, Jeremy?
Well, I'm gobsmacked by that video. I mean, if that video has made Nigel Farage so angry that he's resigning and calling a by-election, I mean, you know, during the junior doctor strike, I would have about 8 or 10 journalists outside my front door most days. You know, during the Leveson inquiry, when I was culture secretary, I actually had to leave the house early because the journalists wouldn't go until I'd gone, and I didn't want my kids to have to walk through them when they were going to school. I actually had talking about Sky News chartered a helicopter to follow me as I went to the courtroom for the Leveson inquiry. And, you know, it was, frankly, on a personal level, it was a horrendous experience. But I do recognise, as I was culture secretary, that this is a country where the politicians do not control the press. Now, what I could see there was one person very quietly going up to a front door and then coming away from it again. If that was, like, so horrific that we're now... The poor people of Clacton are going to have a by-election. I mean, get real. Politics is a lot tougher than this. And if you're going to be Prime Minister of a democracy, I'm sorry, but that does not say to me that this is something that is so appalling that you're going to have to take a stand and cause a by-election.
Tim, I don't think this is the only incident. I've been in television studios all afternoon. I haven't followed the detail of this. I think there's another example of the address being published by a newspaper. And I agree with a lot of what Jeremy says, but there's a difference between politicians who put themselves in the firing line and to be held account, but when your family starts to be targeted in any way, and I think you need a zero-tolerance approach to it, because where does it end? And I think for a father to be protecting his daughter, even if actually it's quite minor in the early stages, drawing a line under it, it's not the reason why he's called the by-election, it's the whole thing we've already been discussing, Jeremy, but actually protecting your family is a very important thing.
I want to ask you a bit about the way Nigel Farage's sort of tone today, because he said he was very angry. Yeah. And I think something that has appealed to a lot of people about Nigel Farage is that, you know, he almost seems like he's having a good time. He's sort of fun in a way. Yeah. Do you think this is going to be a problem for him? His sort of demeanour, if you like.
Yes, I do. And I've spoken to him about it. He's one of the best media performers in the country. For 25 years, he's managed to turn issues that have had minority support into majority support, notably Brexit. He's a great persuader and he's a marathon runner. He sticks at the course. But when he's asked about his own personal circumstances, he's very bad. I know I wouldn't like my personal finances interrogated or whatever, but if you stand for public life, you can't say it's none of your business. I can spend it on Ferraris, whatever. It makes you look evasive. And it doesn't help. And he's not helping himself by these performances. And there are a number of questions I have about, Reform's internal management at the moment that need to be addressed, that, frankly, are not going to be addressed by this by-election. There's plenty...
What are the biggest questions
I would criticise about, lots of things happening in Reform, but I'm absolutely with Nigel on this by-election and why it's better to trust the voters of Clacton rather than politicians in the Houses of Parliament to decide whether these sleaze allegations are serious enough for him to be suspended.
Is there a world, Aisha, where Nigel Farage comes out stronger from all of this?
Well, I suppose I go back to my earlier point, which is if he's really confident that he hasn't done anything wrong, just put all this information into the public domain, wait for the process to take its course. And I think there is an argument that the parliamentary commissioner looking into this could expedite his report, so it's not hanging around for a long time. I think that is... I think that's a fair comment. You know, if you're really confident that you've done nothing wrong, let the process take its course, put everything out into the public domain. And look, we were just talking about the sort of pressures on politicians now, and it's true, right? We are in an incredibly vicious climate. I was just saying to the others, before I came into the studio, I actually had to go and give a police statement about some of the death threats and violence that I have had made against me as a Muslim, left-wing, female person in the public eye. This is desperately unpleasant. And what would be a good thing to move on from here is for any political leader with a platform to make it their mission to take down the temperature in terms of how we do our political discourse. Now, Nigel Farage actually could set the tone on this. Look at how our leaders have been treated recently. Keir Starmer had his family house, where his sister, I believe, was living, firebombed. where was the messages of solidarity from Nigel Farage and other political commentators who are... And that is a terrible thing. And by the way, I would not wish that on anybody. Would not wish that on Nigel Farage.
What's worse about that was that social media was full of alternative explanations about Fireball, which were incredibly
shocking.
Nasty about
I mean,
Keir Starmer
we talk about the family and protecting the family. There were stories about Keir Starmer's son that were, like, all over the media. When Keir Starmer got a bit of extra protection at Arsenal Football Club, people lost their absolute minds about it, saying this was, like, the worst thing in the world. Angela Rayner had her entire family, you know, gone through, people were doorstepping her family. So I think if we're going to... And I think this is wrong, I think all of that is wrong, but if we're going to do that, we have to have consistency, and what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. You can't revel as another party when other people's families are getting doorstepped, when people's sisters' houses are getting firebombed, and then when Sky News knocks on your door, be like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of time. It's either do it properly, and let's try and have a new culture and a new tone in politics, because I think we're reaching a point of a tipping point where politics is becoming so violent and so vicious. It's actually affecting our democracy in a bad way.
Do you think that's got worse since you've been in Parliament?
I think that it's always been tough, but I think social media has made it tougher. And one reason is because it's 24/7. There's just no escaping it. And another reason is, frankly, that mainstream politicians have just not really learned how to do social media. We've been really, really struggling. But I do actually very much agree with Aisha's concern. I mean, none of my kids, you know, 12, 14 and 16, none of them want to go into politics. And I'm so relieved.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't want them...
that you are relieved for a profession that you were part of.
Well, I think in fairness, the reason is actually because they're sick to death of it as dad. You know, it's not because of all this stuff, but I think there is, you know, a risk here that people who could make a real contribution to public life just say, actually, I do not want the hassle and the abuse.
I agree. Everyone is responsible. Aisha, fair enough, she's picked up on something that Reform have done that have been ugly, and we need to put it right. But Reform is regularly talked of as racist, as an extreme form of politics by the leadership of the Labour Party. So the toxification is happening not just in social media, it's politicians are their own worst enemies. Their name-calling of each other is actually at least as big a part of the problem.
Thank you, and thank you, Tim, because I think you have got to hot-foot it to another studio now, but thank you for being with us. Well, just before we came on air, I was also joined by the chair of the Labour Party, Anna Turley, and I should say we spoke to her just before her party confirmed that it would not be putting up a candidate to stand in that by-election. Anna Turley, thanks so much for talking to us. Do you think that Nigel Farage has a point? You know, should it be for the people of Clacton to decide if their MP has done wrong?
Well, firstly, he already has a mandate from the people of Clacton from the last election. But the point he's trying to make here is that he can go out to the public and ask them to make a decision, a verdict on the information in front of them. But the point is he hasn't provided that information. That's why he's in the mess that he's in. We know that he's had a £5 million donation, which he didn't declare to the people of Clacton or anybody else. We know that we've unearthed all sorts of things about excess properties that he hasn't declared. We know he's received money for things like security, housing, all sorts of things that he never put on the register of donations for MPs. And that's a point of principle that actually we should know what money's coming into our politics. We should know what decisions people are making.
I guess that investigation's still ongoing. We don't actually know that the Commissioner has decided he's done wrong or not.
Well, it's pretty clear that he said he accepted that money and it was not on the declaration of interest. And we have that declaration so that the people of Clacton, the people we represent, can see what money we've received. And then it's up to them to make a decision. If he's received £5 million from a crypto billionaire, but the public want to make a decision, that's fine. Then that's not against the rules. But the point was he didn't declare it. So it's all very well asking people to make a decision now, but he's never given the people the information they need. And he's still avoiding scrutiny, he's still avoiding questions. And actually the best thing to do would be to answer those questions fully. Where did the money come from? What did he spend it on? Why didn't he declare it? Then people can make their decisions.
If the people of Clacton make their decision and, you know, he gets a big mandate in a by-election, will you then accept that that's the verdict.
He will still have to be subject to the same rules as all of us as MPs. So he may well get re-elected, but the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner will then continue this investigation, because this isn't just about Nigel Farage, it's about all of us. I think we all have to accept whatever our views of individual politicians, whether it's £5 million or £500, we have to declare that. It's about protecting democracy from outside interest, from financial interference, and it's whether you're left or right, whatever your political views, it's about protecting democracy, not just for today, but for the members of Parliament that come after us and the constituents that come after that. Either we believe in a democracy where money doesn't have that interference and the public can make their decisions on the basis of what's disclosed in a register, or we don't.
I guess what his supporters would say is he's a different kind of politician, someone who has a social media following, someone who's made money. What's wrong with politicians making money?
There's nothing wrong with politicians making money as long as they declare it. But then I would also say to people, you can't say you're a man of the people if you're earning £22,000 an hour advocating for gold bullion and not disclosing that. You know, the British people need to make a decision about whether they want an MP earning £22,000 an hour representing
I guess his argument would be, you know, we don't live in a communist country, it's about aspiration, it's about earning money, and that's what he's done there.
Sure, we'll declare it. Tell us how you earn it, tell us who gave it to you, tell us how you've spent it, and show us that you're putting the British public first. And that's what the register and that's what the rules are there for. And it can't be one rule for Nigel Farage because he has a big social media following and one rule for another MP. These are the rules. We've all come to them collectively. There is an independent adjudicator on this, the Standards Commissioner, and it's for him to decide what the rules are and whether or not we've broken them.
OK, and obviously, there's a big question about who's actually going to stand in this contest, and we now understand that the Conservatives aren't going to stand. Is Labour going to stand?
We have a National Executive Committee that will be making that decision this evening, so it'll be down to that committee, which is elected from various members, trade unions, and that's our governing body, so they'll make that decision tonight. But whatever happens, this is an important by-election that people can see all the evidence, and if Nigel Farage wants to run this by-election, he has to answer all about the money, all about his earnings, all about his associates, criminal associates, donations. And I think before he goes back out to the people of Clacton, he needs to answer all of those outstanding questions that so far he's ducked and dodged.
Do you think there is a potential that the NEC is going to decide Labour's not going to stand?
Yeah, that's absolutely very likely. I know other parties are in the same position
Very
as well.
likely.
So that is a real option that the party is considering, because why should everyone dance to Nigel Farage's tune? He has a mandate, he's been elected, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner should be allowed to do his work, all the evidence should be put before the British people, and then we should make a decision. This kind of show case sort of election is all about a distraction because he won't answer the questions that have been put in front of him. He's had weeks and months to answer.
He's offered to pay for the by-election. What do you make of that?
I think that's bizarre, and I don't think that's legal. You can't do that in a country. Again, it comes back to the principles of protecting democracy. You can't have a situation where a political party pays for an election. What kind of independent election would that be? That's just not the way the system runs in this country. And it's a bizarre mentality that he thinks money can buy everything. We live in a democracy. We have to protect that democracy from financial interference. And this is another example of him just having a very blasé and reckless attitude to money and democracy.
You talk about protecting democracy. Reform have criticised Labour's attempts to delay local elections, the rules being changed for the Greater Manchester mayoral by-election, which Reforms say hasn't helped them. Can you make that argument?
Well, the elections were going to be delayed because of reorganisation. So these elections were about sort of reinforcing, having elections sort of 2 years in a row. But that's fine. You know, that's in the past now. So that was done because of the expense and the cost of them. That decision was made and it's taken. But this is a...
So that was in no way a political decision?
No, absolutely. This was a decision about money and about finance. We were undergoing huge local government reorganisation, and it was bizarre to ask those local governments to pay for an election and then to do it again under new boundaries in a year's time. But that decision was changed, it was overruled, we accept that and we move on. But there is no reason for this by-election because, as I said, he already has a mandate for a general election.
But what about the changing the rules on the by-election?
Well, I don't understand what...
Sorry, the mayoral race, you changed the rules so it's not first past the post anymore.
Well, again, local elections change all the time. We've had different rules in Wales. All the time we're looking at different ways of elections, different counting prospects. That's a natural process of democracy. We have different electoral rules in Scotland. That's not unusual. So this is something that happens all the time. There is no need for this by-election, but Nigel Farage has done this because his back's against the wall. He knows he's crumbling under the scrutiny, and he wants a distraction to try and create some kind of pantomime, and that is not the reason to have a general election.
OK, Anna Turley, thanks so much for coming on this evening. Thank you. Well, Anna Turley there, and we have another opposition politician that has joined us on the sofa, Josh Baberinda of the Lib Dems. You've done a lot of running on this story. I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I asked Anna Turley, if you don't mind, because I think, you know, a lot of people will think, is this not democracy in action? Can't the people of Clacton decide whether or not their MP has done wrong?
Democracy in action involves letting yourself be held to account against the rules that you've signed up to. And so today's resignation of Nigel Farage is not a resignation of principle. It's a resignation that has happened after he has been caught red-handed accepting big donations from various donors without having declared them. There's no principle in this at all. This is all about Nigel Farage. He doesn't give a toss about the ordinary British people.
But is it he's saying, you know, he's taking this
own...
to the ordinary British people to make their decision?
Well, he's not. He's not subjecting himself to those who are there to enforce the rules on behalf of the people of this country. He's running scared of this investigation.
Do you think it's taking too long, the investigation?
Well, we need things to be done as soon as possible, but the fault doesn't lie with those who are investigating. I think there's a lot to investigate. There's £5 million worth of donations to investigate from Christopher Harborne, which I've just learnt via The Guardian, is now, that was reported to the National Crime Agency. So this is escalating very, very quickly.
So what exactly is it that the Lib Dems and you are trying to achieve now?
Well, first of all, there shouldn't be a by-election full stop. Nigel Farage should not be able to play the system to serve his own interests, as he's been doing for a very long time. And so a big step that could theoretically be taken is this by-election to be blocked. But I'm also calling, if we have to have a by-election, saying on behalf of my party that no party should humour this man with the circus that he is trying to secure. And so he needs to be subjected to investigation as soon as possible in order that justice on behalf of the British people can be achieved. He's dined out on a career full of talking about taking back control, yet he refuses to be straight with us about who controls him.
What do you say to people who'd say that he's a different kind of politician? Parliament is full of people that haven't been in the real world, but is he someone who has been in the real world? And, you know, he's a different kind of politician. Should we not accept that?
He's not a different kind of politician. Nigel Farage is just as establishment as they get. He's literally been an elected politician, first of all, since I was about 5 years old. And secondly, this is a guy who said, I'm going to change politics. I'm going to be a breath of fresh air. We're going to leave the sleaze behind. But look at the sleaze, look at the deception. It stinks of something akin to corruption, and possibly even corruption itself. That is not new politics. We've seen that before. Nigel Farage is old news, and he is trying to defend his own pocket and bank balance, and not that of the British people.
Thank you very much, Josh Baberinda from the Lib Dems. Well, what about the good people of Clacton, given they're the ones that are going to have to make this decision? Let's have a listen. Phoebe Southworth is with us now. And you've been chatting to people this afternoon. What they've been saying?
Yeah, of course, we've heard a lot of political reaction to Nigel Farage standing down here in Clacton and triggering a by-election. But there is, of course, only one voice that really matters, and that's the people who live here, the constituents. This is what they told us earlier. They said, witch hunt, it's a big conspiracy against Nigel Farage. He's a good guy. He does speak for the people. Of course, we know that's the lie Nigel Farage is inviting constituents to agree with. But on the flip side, others are saying he's enacting some kind of political stunt, which they hope will backfire. And they're pleased that he has stepped down by his own volition because they never liked him anyway. Here's what people told us when we spoke to them earlier.
I think it's a shame. They're out to get him. It's a witch hunt. You know, he's a good guy. He's always come over. I'm a fully paid up member of Reform, have been for several years. He does a lot. He's committed, and the whole team behind him are committed.
I think it's a political strategy. If he steps down and he does remain stepped down, he doesn't lose anything. But if his core supporters want him back, then he proves he has popular support, and I'm inclined to think that that's his strategy.
Hopefully the people will vote for him again and he can actually prove, and then it will show the rest of them then that we actually want some change, and maybe they might start listening.
Well, he wasn't really here much anyway, so perhaps we can get someone who is more supportive of the community itself now. So, yeah, someone who puts the people's interests above the interests of themselves.
Well, one thing we didn't hear today when we were asking people what they thought is, Nigel, who? People here really have strong opinions on both sides, and it will be very interesting to see in the coming weeks how this evolves and potentially how people here change their view as this political drama unfolds, Ali.
Thanks so much, Phoebe. Great to get the view from Clacton. Right, let's get some final thoughts, shall we, from Aisha and Jeremy, who are both still here. Where does this go from here?
Well, I think there's a question to be asked about the parliamentary procedure on this. I understand that they're going to try and move the writ tomorrow to have this by-election. But I don't know if it's an actual kind of done deal. If the by-election will happen, I don't know if there'll have to be a vote in Parliament. So, you know, let's see actually what happens. But I just want to pick up on something that you asked Josh, which was, oh, people see him as a man of the people. And there is this mythology. I don't know many men of the people who just get 5 million quid off of me. I just don't think that is like the hallmark of an ordinary bloke.
Mm. And Jeremy, is there a world where Farage fights this on his own?
I think there is, actually. I think my final thought really is, first of all, money and politics is such a toxic combination. And actually, it's one of the few things we generally get right in our political system. We don't have the corruption problems that you see in America or many other democracies. And we do that because we have transparency. And all politicians sign up to very uncomfortable transparency. But I also think tonight has been one of the perhaps rare political miscalculations by Nigel Farage. He may well maintain the support of his most loyal fans. He's very good at that. But his problem is that a lot of people really do not want him to get anywhere near number 10. And he's given all those people an extra reason to try and make sure that he doesn't get near number 10 and Reform MPs don't get elected. And I think that those people are coming away from all of this even more certain that it will be a big mistake to allow Reform MPs to get elected.
Briefly, is that right? Do you think this has been a miscalculation?
I think it has, and I think it was done to sort of try and... I think two things have happened. This is a sort of deflection and going on the attack against the media, particularly Sky News and the Times and Sunday Times for doing this investigation. And I think they are both missteps, particularly for somebody who's always been very confident with the media. Look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Get it all out in the open, see what happens with the parliamentary process, and then fight the fight.
Thank you so much, Aisha. And Jeremy, for being on the sofa on another big day in Westminster. That is it for us tonight. You've probably now worked out it's not Cathy Newman. I meant to say this at the start. It's Ali Fortescue. She will be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching.